Humans are very emotional when it comes to food. And so we gather around food. All of our important events happen around meals and food. Thinking we're just going to eat simply because this is healthier just doesn't work. About 80% of the population in the United States does not consume the recommended amount of whole grain today. And they've been told this for decades. Fruits and vegetables is the same, 80%. And so we really don't do well at being told what to eat. So we can make healthy foods all day long, but if they're not consumed, we really have very marginal impact. I would say the first prong is how do we enable healthier eating by improving the flavor of healthier food choices. The second prong is how do we enable and understand how these ingredients and how these foods are also promoting health and wellness. And so certainly our goal would be, again, is how do we just utilize this new frontier of opportunity and really help us advance agriculture that goes beyond making it a commodity to something that is now very focused and helps us to live a better lifestyle.
Please welcome Dr. Devin Peterson.
Let me set the table and talk about the value of food. We eat for pleasure. We gather around meals for important events. I'm sure many of you this past holiday weekend gathered around friends and family and around food that you enjoyed. I can't imagine a world where we don't enjoy our food. We eat for pleasure, but food is also about nutrition and about health. Over the past century, we've made tremendous advancements in the food supply. It is more abundant, it is more affordable, nutrient deficiencies have gone down, it is safer. But I'm sure many of you would feel that food could be doing more. I'd like to ask you to think about what impact do you think food has on your health and wellness? Here's a staggering statistic, and this comes from Nature News, a very reputable scientific body. And basically what it's telling you is that poor diet is responsible for more of the global burden of ill health than sexually transmitted diseases, drugs, alcohol, and tobacco combined. Wow. Let's look at numbers a little bit and different metrics. 2017, 11 million deaths were attributed to poor diet. That's 1 out of 5 deaths globally. Same statistics here in the United States. Another way to think about food is just not about death, but it's also about our quality of life. How does it promote our lifestyle? And there's something known as DALYs, this sort of disability-adjusted life years. In other words, how is food impacting our general quality of life? And if you look at that metric, the amount of time that we're spent living, that we are in a disabled or diseased state, and the same metric goes up to now 250 million years, 255. Huge. Huge human costs. Financial costs are also amazingly huge, and you'd say staggering. Here's some chronic diseases that are well associated with the diet. And if you look at these, cancer, heart disease, metabolic disorders such as obesity and diabetes, cognitive health, cost the United States $1 trillion a year. Just these alone. Since 1970, the amount of money we're spending on healthcare has increased to the current time over threefold. It used to be 6% of our GDP. Now it is close to 20. That is not sustainable. So what is driving food choice and food patterns? This is no secret. We eat, again, for pleasure. When we really look at what is driving food choice, in general, people eat what they like. And this is a missing part of our agronomic system today. So the top 3 things that affect, you would say, food pattern or food consumption behavior is going to be acceptability or the flavor, cost, and convenience. Imagine a world, again, where we didn't resist healthy. So what do we need to do to develop healthier foods? We have to understand what is driving liking of them or dislike. And this is just a picture, not the best resolution, but it talks about, you would say, human perception of food and understanding it's a very complex process. There are 3 sensory systems in your oral cavity, millions of receptors that are responding to what we're eating and providing information to our brain is a big part of what we eat. Understanding what is driving liking provides opportunities. Oh, maybe I'm way behind. It provides an opportunity to say, how do we make healthy more accepted, more consumed? Once people are eating healthier, we can take it a step further. There has been tremendous advancements in something known as a sort of omics revolution or omics technologies that really help us to understand complex systems, for example, biology, our genes, and our environment, such as food. Here at OSU, over the last 4 years, we've put tremendous investment into building a metabolomics platform to really put a better lens, a scientific leadership, if you will, to what is in food that drives health. Also, instead of saying one size fits all, which it doesn't, for elderly, what should we be eating? If you're a diabetic, what is your, you would say, ideal food pattern? Young, et cetera. How do we put more understanding to this complex behavior between food and, of course, promoting health and wellness? So I'd like to say that this is not so far of a problem, that we have a foundation. Although our agronomic system is designed, in my opinion, to make food affordable and abundant. Those are two good missions. We have advanced breeding technologies for crops, for animals that really have driven make food abundant, make it available, make it economical, make it affordable. Probably in the United States, we have one of the cheapest food supplies around. The challenge is we've never really bred or thought about making these ingredients that would drive healthier options to be more consumed, which requires us to load it with salt, sugar, fat, and other, you would say, additives that really aren't ideal for a healthy lifestyle. So what do we need to do? We just need to really get nature to do more of the heavy lifting. We have to get it to think a little bit more. We have to think a little bit more and utilize, you'd say, our ingredients to a better degree. As I mentioned, whole grain foods, one of the key things that is related to, I would say, poor health, that we just don't consume enough whole grain. I mentioned in the video 80%. 80% of people, we've been told for how many decades to eat whole grain? 50% should be whole grain. We still don't do it. Part of it is because, again, it's just not as accepted. It's not as light. Can it be more light? Absolutely. But we're treating it like a commodity. This is a challenge. So we could, if I went to a breeder today and said, I would like to breed wheat, not just for agronomic traits, but I want to breed it for human traits, I want to breed it for acceptance, they wouldn't know what to select for. We need to understand that interface between the mouth. That is the gateway to nutrition, right? Literally and figuratively. And so it's not just also about ingredients. We have to also think about that we don't typically consume flour, at least I do not regularly. We bake it into great products. We have culinary arts that have made things delicious. But we also, again, providing this understanding of what are the markers, how do we get science to lead us so that we can do better with this commodity-based system and rise it to a new level. I show you this great picture of tomatoes as another prime example. I mentioned, again, another statistic, 80% don't consume the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables. We don't even grow enough to meet the demands because they're just not selected. So those tomatoes look great, don't they? You go to the grocery store, you're going to squeeze a couple. They're nice and firm. There's no blemishes. That's how they're bred. You take them home, you slice them. It's not so good. So what do? You dump some salt on it, throw it in your salad. You throw what? Salad dressing that's loaded with fat and sugar and salt. Order heirloom tomatoes, much more flavorful. But when they're breeding them, they don't know what to select for. This is going against how we choose food. We need to move from a commodity system. I'm going to just throw out again, you'd say, a larger sort of umbrella of what is foods for health. And of course, at the bottom left is really what I've been talking about, is how do we enable better eating by enabling us to actually design foods that are more health promoting, but at the same time desired. The top in the purple, our current agronomic system, as Casey was alluding to, is not sustainable. We use too much water and too much CO2. And so we're also thinking about, of course, when you're making healthier foods, it has to be healthy for the planet. A healthy planet is healthy for people. But the one that I really want to talk about, and when we talk about investment, I think one of the key things that we need to think through is how do we make impact? We're really good in academia at knowledge and thinking about problems in a very sanitary space. But we need to get muddy. We need to get out in the so-called where they sell food. And this is a strategic partnership that we need to really think about if we really want to take knowledge and have it have, you would say, societal value. When you look at big food, like it or not, many companies touch more than 1 billion people a day. A day. Those are strategic partnerships where we could have real impact. If we could take healthier choices and help them make business sense, they sell food. It has to make business sense to make a decision worthy for them. Many people used to put healthier options on menus, and you go into a restaurant and almost nobody's eating them. That's not a good business model. So I think there's a real opportunity for how do we think about the strategic alliance with, in this case, people. We don't sell food. How do we find the people that know how to sell food? The other part that I think would be really a tremendous opportunity for OSU is how do we become the Silicon Valley of healthy food innovation? Right now in Silicon Valley, there's a tremendous investment going on in disturbing the food supply. You've probably heard of Beyond Meat, Impossible Foods, many others. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could attract them like a hub? They would come to us, we would lead them by science. They're typically a little cash-strapped. If we had some financial ability to help them, enable them to do clinical work, as well as advance maybe the flavor parts of it, the acceptance, and in part we got an equity stake in those companies. They go out into the real world, they grow, they become attracted to the big company, they get bought, now we have real impact. Plus, equity coming back to us that allows us to keep doing more. We need a better way to connect with industry. I just want to end on a couple quick thoughts. Food is ripe for innovation, more so than it ever has been. We need to move from this older, outdated, commodity-based system to one that can really elevate food to what it can be doing. We should be thinking about prevention, not treatment. I would say that OSU is poised to be a leader in this space, and we need to be the hub for healthy food innovation. One comment I'll leave you with: what is your superpower? Wouldn't it be awesome if it was food? Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Very interesting. Any questions for Dr. Peterson? Yes?
You mentioned the example of Impossible Burgers, and I'm just wondering if you have any other examples of success stories that really illuminate what's possible.
So right now, Impossible is probably, Beyond Meat is one that's gone public and certainly has raised, I think, what, $3 billion, and stock prices have almost doubled, right, since they launched. They're another one in the same space. What their goal is to get us off animal products because they believe that these are not sustainable, you would say, ways that we should be manufacturing food anymore. But those have been good success stories. There are other ones right now. If you were to go to Silicon Valley and work, or at least have some intersection there are others that are looking at coffee advancement, a whole range of how do we think about healthy. There's a lot of, you would say, energy. 10 years ago, it was about alternative fuels. I would say today, there's a huge vibe on food. And I think there's an opportunity for an academic unit to lead that space in a much more effective way, which would be a very beneficial relationship if we could get the right resources to make that happen.
Others? Oh, okay.
Are you also considering public policy implications for food deserts, access to food in schools? That seems to be missing as you're talking about this.
You're correct. I think that in the end, our theme has focused on a few strategic things. I think Casey Hoy and others, I think the goal of these discovery themes is not to be working in isolation and independent of each other, but certainly to be collaborating where it made sense. There's no question that school lunch programs and education is a key piece to move forward. I would acknowledge that first and foremost, there's socioeconomic type, you would say parameters that are important. But I think in the end, these are all things we need to be considering. But I think, again, how do we advance food, at least is what I would say we're trying to focus on those core pieces, really being how do you make them more healthy? How do we make them more desirable? That would be at least how we push our agenda.
I'll ask what might be a controversial question, but I've always just wondered, the question about non-GMO foods. I mean, how is that something you can answer for us yet? What we should be choosing? Is it important? Is there a reason we should care?
So I want to be careful because I think this is a very large question, and I'm going to give you a perspective. I believe in leading by science. I think we've been altering genes in all of our plant-based and animal-based systems for a long time by traditional methodologies. That's called just traditional breeding. We've done that because instead of wanting to cultivate and live on every person has 20 square miles of land to subside, we've said if we can make food do better, we can now live in civilization in closer areas and have other benefits. I think we need all tools, and I think there's been plenty of examples actually where GMO is nothing more than a precision way of thinking about advancing food. I think I understand the concerns as it comes to corporate interests, but I think that there's plenty of good examples out there how they have saved papayas in Hawaii, have made a lot of impact and actually result in a lot of feeding of people that would have not had otherwise. So I try to look at it as how do we think about this in the best way possible. Science is to lead, and to think about that as way I would say is how do we use this in a better way.
All right, another round of applause for
Thank
Dr.
you.
Peterson.